have reached the end of the first week of the independent rape gangs inquiry being led by Rupert Lowe. I cannot emphasise how important this inquiry is because I have no faith that the government-led inquiry will provide justice for victims, and the glacial pace at which that is moving at the moment is evidence of that. There are already insights emerging that we either didn't know or that have been underappreciated. The most significant are that there has been an international dimension which so far we weren't aware of in the rape gang saga. It is now apparent that there were young girls and women who were sexually exploited in Britain, who were then trafficked overseas, usually to Pakistan, and sexually exploited there as well. There is emerging evidence that illegal migrants were part of rape gangs, which would connect the small boats crisis with the rape gangs crisis. But the most significant theme that I think runs across the week is the sheer coordination across these gangs across the country. There are the same names, the same tactics, the same cities that pop up again and again in survivor testimony. Rupert Lowe has likened this to a well-drilled army, and I don't think we fully appreciate at this stage just how coordinated these gangs are as a network across the United Kingdom. The tragedy, however, is that the establishment still doesn't care, at least not enough. And there have been three groups that have been conspicuous in their silence when it comes to this inquiry in the last week. The first is the Islamic community. I haven't heard nearly enough from so-called community leaders denouncing what has been a blight on Islamic communities across the country. The second is the media. With the exception of GB News, they have been silent on this inquiry, which has been shameful. The BBC hasn't said a word on it, which goes to show that they still care more about their precious multicultural project than they do about the safety of women and young girls. And then the third is the political parties themselves. I think that the Conservatives and Labor have not cooperated with this inquiry as fully as they should have because they are afraid that their silence on the rape gangs for too long will reveal that they were complicit. And I don't think Reform is supporting this as fully as it should be for what I suspect are petty personal squabbles with Rupert Lowe. My challenge to Nigel Farage, and indeed to David on the panel tonight, would be to more fully support this inquiry as it moves from gathering insights into seeking justice, because it is the best hope to get that justice for the victims of this atrocity.
There's nothing more important than keeping you and your loved ones safe online. With so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. And with their Valentine's Day sale, this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. It's the easiest way to stay safe online, protect your money, and save big for less than £2 a month. Click the link in the video's description or scan the QR code today.
Well said.
Well, straight to you, David, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, justice for these young people is absolutely paramount. And as far as I'm aware, there's no petty politics going on whatsoever.
So why haven't we heard Nigel Farage talking about this more? I haven't heard anything on him.
To be fair, you do call out the media, right, in your intro, but I couldn't find much at all of a splash on this anywhere online.
Patrick Christie's has covered it
GB News has been covering it
now. The BBC hasn't, but I want to get back to that comment. I haven't heard Nigel Farage talk about this inquiry this week.
No, it's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about it. I think also we're so sort of probably overwhelmed by what else is going on that I'm not sure it's been top of his agenda, and actually it probably should be. I'm not here to defend Nigel Farage, but actually I think all politicians of all different colours should actually make sure they come out, that justice is done. You know, also I want to know who knew what and when. And why wasn't it followed up? And in fact, Rennie and I, we were talking about this years ago, I think, you know, in terms of the grooming gangs and the lines, that we knew what was going on back then. And yet I want to know why the forces did nothing about it.
Well, we do. I mean, we do know, don't we? And we've also seen this week that there's a police member that's been repeatedly protected and has allegedly assaulted one of the girls.
Do you agree with Will's sort of prognosis that these people are complicit and that's why we're not hearing about it?
Yes, of course, and that's why we need a statutory inquiry so that they are all held to account.
Yeah, Trevor?
Yeah, no, I do. And I have to admit, I love Will's passion in this, actually, because I think you hear about this, you hear about Epstein, and no one really seems to care about the victims much. It all seems to be about protecting men, essentially, for crimes against women, and I think something needs to be done. inquiry on this, on Epstein, on all of these things. These are powerful men taking advantage and colluding together to make sure that women are not getting justice. Absolutely.
I remain astonished by the complicity of so many institutions across the country when you see these testimony from victims, particularly the NHS and the police are two, which there were several nurses, several police officers which saw these problems going on and they actively...
and they need to go to jail.
And they need to go to jail. And the good thing to hear is that Rupert Lowe is organising for negligence claims to be actually made against people that they can identify who did turn away.
Absolutely.
Prosecutions.
The rape gang scandal, described by many as the biggest failure in British justice, is back under the spotlight.
Today marks the beginning of something long overdue. Today we open the hearings of our independent rape gang inquiry. 2 full weeks of evidence, testimony and scrutiny. 2 weeks in which survivors will finally be heard.
Absolutely. An independent inquiry, which was launched by independent MP Rupert Lowe, says that victims are still being ignored, warning the truth has been, quote, buried for decades by fear and political cowardice. His comments follow renewed attention on the case of Fiona Goddard, who says that she was treated like a dog during her time living in a children's home in Bradford.
There was a phone call once where she tried reporting me missing and she said I was being picked up by Asian men and I was being abused. Now the call handler said back to her, you can't describe them as Asian men because that's racist. You should just be glad your child is being taught a different culture.
Yeah, rancid, isn't it, really? I mean, the inquiry has been funded by the public, so by possibly even people in this room, I don't know if you donated to it, but through crowd sharing rather than the government. Do you have interest? I don't know. Did anyone in this room give any money to this inquiry? Yeah, a couple of people. Yeah, fair enough. Someone on the panel as well. There you go. But anyway, right. So look, some of the details about this were absolutely horrendous. I mean, it's all horrendous. But the fact that specifically around Eid as well. I'll come to you first on this, Emma. That there's testimony that basically some Pakistani men in Britain celebrated Eid by inviting their dads, cousins, brothers, etc. round so that they could abuse young working-class white girls.
Yeah, I mean, years ago I did an interview with a woman who was a grooming gang survivor. She remained anonymous, but she spoke about the religious motivations behind what her attackers were doing to her, the sorts of names that they would call her. I kind of really want to say them repeat them on television. But the motivation was clearly religious and clearly racist against her because she was a young white woman. In her case, she actually wasn't from a sort of vulnerable background. She was a fairly middle-class background. And the evidence seems to be overwhelming when you hear these stories, that there is a religious motivation there. And it's not just that the authorities didn't want to act because they were afraid of being accused of racism. I think in some cases they were quite clearly afraid of being called Islamophobic. And the idea that you have to refer to them even as Asian grooming gangs, and it's not Japanese people that are predominantly doing this. So even in the way that we've been repeatedly told, we're not allowed to even call them Asian grooming gang, but even that isn't quite accurate, is it?
Yeah.
So I think, good on Rupert Lowe for actually taking the initiative and doing this, because I think it's an absolute disgrace that the government haven't stepped up to the plate and done this properly.
Yeah,
because they can't be trusted to.
And there has actually been a development on it today, but we'll talk about that in a second with Adam. But I would like to just go to the audience first, if that's all right. Hello, thank you very much for coming tonight. What would you like to say on this?
Hi, thank you for having me. And I have one question. As being a journalist on my own and exposing child sex trafficking and grooming gangs in my documentary, and my biggest question is now, because we have this independent inquiry, which is perfect that finally we have someone doing this job. But what do you expect actually comes out? Because as saying it's independent, so it's not guided by the government. And we all know that this corruption and those crimes are also infiltrated in NHS service, in police. So high-stake jobs are involved. So what do you expect is actually coming out?
Well, it's a great question. It's a brilliant question. And I'll come to Barry in a second, but the reason why I wanted to go to Adam is because we were just talking about it off air, actually, because today's development is Rupert Lowe saying that they're actually going to press ahead with private prosecutions. So that's the biggie, I think, that maybe could come out of this.
To tackle the rape and the grooming gangs of this country, you need to have political will to do so. Labour do not have that. They've tried everything not to have an inquiry. And for me, it's because they're up to this in their necks, or up to their necks in this. From councillors through to people all the way to the top back then. Rupert Lowe, Sammy Woodhouse, they really do need some appreciation for what they're doing here. If they are privately prosecuting or funding private prosecutions of these men will be dragged up to court. Our authorities are so intertwined with people that want to cover up things or are invested in this grooming gang scandal. Things are not going to happen. So a private prosecution is the way to go, and I thank Rupert and Sammy for doing that.
Barry, I can see you were nodding along when this lady here on the front row was...
No, absolutely, and I haven't seen your documentary, but it'd be... Yeah, okay. Oh, right, great. Well, it'd be really interesting to see. I mean, I think the key points are not just about believing women and girls when they say these things, but what you were saying, and Adam, what you've picked up on, is unfortunately an independent inquiry cannot subpoena the very people that we need to get there and to answer the serious questions. And that is, and I was listening to Fiona, but also another interview where they were talking about the report from social services. And what was quite extraordinary was here was somebody who worked at the home making a report to social services, and what was logged down in social services notes was that they weren't going to do anything about it, right? No. Unless she was dragged into a car, unless there was something like her being dragged into a car. Now, those people, that is malfeasance in a public office. Those people should be held responsible. Those people should be up in court. The social services people, the people at the police, if they were complicit in it. But that's why we need a statutory inquiry that has the power to subpoena people, force them to come and answer the questions about why they behaved so appallingly.
Tell your Prime Minister to do it then, Barry. Yeah.